Welcome to this week's edition of Off Guard. I'm your host, Yusuf Estes, and I want to remind myself and all of us it's important not to be caught off guard. Oftentimes, we hear today people talking about faith, religion, and then comparing that to what we know in science. And very frequently, we find people saying that there cannot be resolution between the two. On the one hand, you've got the Bible over here saying that there's about 5,600 years that have passed since the creation of everything that exists. And then on the other hand, you've got science over here telling you that, well, actually, it's more like some billions of years just for the earth itself. Oh, yeah. And by the way, we've even got some people that claim that their ancestors have been here for over 10,000 years. That's in China. Where do we find resolution for this? Or is there such a thing? Can a person be a good believer and a scientist at the same time? Well, I know we find some people who would be a Christian and a scientist, a Jew and a scientist, a Muslim and a scientist, a Hindu and a scientist. It's still, there are some things that we find in the books and scriptures that seem to contradict what we know today to be fact in science. And before I go too far, I want to remember that there have been a tremendous number of advances in science in the last few hundred years. Amazing things that we've come to know, learn, and understand. With the help of the telescope, we've discovered many things out there in the universe. With the help of the microscope, we've discovered a lot of things there as well. At the same time, there have been advances in how we understand hydrology. You know, the way water cycles, and geology, the way the earth is formed, and still forming even now. Some of the scriptures, it seems as though they, well, contradict what we're finding in science. And in fact, the scientists seem to have it all together when they tell us, no, it all happened as an occurrence of a big bang that took place and just went boom. And everything just by chance fell where it is today. Everything just sort of came about as we see it today, and there's no real pattern. There's no real organization here. It's just circumstance. This is how it happened. We don't know how, but it's big. In fact, that's one of the things that they use to help explain away things. Talking to you about the size of the universe in terms of the distance across it in light years and millenniums, something we have no idea about. Or talking to us about the subject of sizes beyond anything we can imagine. Or talking to us about times of long ago, it's way beyond our comprehension. Like 2 billion years ago, 3 billion years ago, 50 trillion years ago. How could I prove otherwise, you know? How could a person read and understand the books of science today and still really want to adhere to any faith? And that's really a bad way to get caught off guard if you're a believer, isn't it? What we did is to develop this website called Science Islam, ScienceIslam.com. What I'm going to be presenting here is found over there as well, and you'll find a number of scientists. I think we have 9 videos of scientists who themselves have discovered something amazing. Not from the Bible, not from the Old Testament, New Testament, not from the Hindu Sanskrit, but actually they found it in the Quran, in the Arabic language. It was so astounding to them that in fact each and every one of them became believers. And in fact one of them on the videotape accepted that Islam must be the way. And he acknowledged there's really only one God, Allah, and that Muhammad is his last messenger, based on the findings that he had there. I realize that this may be coming at you very fast, and you might be saying, well, where are you getting all this? I don't see any evidence. In other programs, I've always told you that when we discuss with anyone, we begin by saying, thank you for asking me about my religion. And then we continue by saying that we have the truth and the proof. The truth is, if I don't tell the truth, I can go to hell forever. The proof is the Quran. It's still available in the original Arabic language, and it's all over the planet, memorized by so many people. And there's no 2 versions. The other proof is the hadith, stories and teachings that we have from Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. And what we find here is an explanation of more detail of the Quran itself. Yet at the same time, and this is really what I found astounding when I came to Islam, what I had in my Bible, what I had grown up with, in many ways was being confirmed by the Quran. The teaching of Islam telling me that I have to believe in the previous revelations that were sent down in the same way, in the same manner as the Quran came to Muhammad, peace be upon him, confirming all that's good and making sure that we understand there really is only one God. And He's always sent messengers and always sent confirmation and revelation. Now, that's nice, but if you're a scientist, you'll be like, okay, get to the meat of this thing. Well, I'll caution you, before you get too involved in the so-called scientific theories about everything, that these same theories have changed a lot in the last 100, even 50 years. Things that when I was a little kid, we knew to be a fact. There was no doubt about it. Since then, we've discovered some more information and we have to update that. We have to change our mind. Whoops, it's not like that after all. It's this, but now we're sure. And then again later, there's something else over here and we have to rethink that. Even Einstein's theory has been challenged in recent years, talking about errors or mistakes that they consider that he might have made. And well, it's not my job to put down scientists and their efforts. In fact, I enjoy a lot of the results of scientists. I mean, I'm the first guy to tell you how great a microwave oven is for making coffee. And all of us enjoy the new transportation that we have. But at the same time, if I want to believe in science, and what I'm being told by scientists, do I have to give up my faith in God? Do I turn my back on Jesus? Do I run away from Moses? Do I run away from the teachings of Muhammad? I'm speaking now, of course, to all of you. I'm talking to the Jews and Christians and Muslims. In fact, if you want to believe in science, it's a good thing, as long as you keep the balance. And remember, there are things that they say today that they may change tomorrow. Let's take one. For instance, evolution. This is a popular notion for those who hold that everything came about by an accident. They say, there was this big mass and it blew up, the Big Bang Theory, you know. Everything is chaotic. It just came about by accident. There's no real organization here. It's just there, and that's it. That's how it happened. Who cares? And then the earth somehow was covered all over with water. How did it get there? They don't bother to tell you that. Then all of a sudden there's a blue-green algae that begins to live in that water after so many million years. But where did it come from? In fact, some scientists the same scientists have told us that it's impossible to calculate or find a place big enough to calculate the probability of accidentally bringing together the elements to form even one molecule of protein. Now, think about that for a second. And then while you're at it, consider this. If everything came back about by an accident, just a random explosion, as they claim, does that mean then that a tornado could go through a salvage yard, you know, someplace where they keep old cars, refrigerators, and other things, and this tornado or cyclone would go through there and just swirl around and pick those things up in the air, and somehow, magically, out of all of that, would form a brand new automobile and drop it on the ground right in front of your house with the motor running and the tanks full of gas? Dream on. I wouldn't mind having the free gas, don't get me wrong, but the logic is not there. And how about this? When somebody talks to you about the random chance of something happening, suppose that I took a water glass out here, went out to the pavement, and I drop that water glass. It'll break. It'll shatter. Yeah? Sure it will. So I'll get another water glass and drop it the same way. Now, here's the question. Will both of these water glasses, which start out looking just alike, exactly alike, drop them from the same distance down to the cement, but after they hit, will they still be exactly alike? Of course not. Will they ever split exactly in half? Of course not. Will they ever fall down and make 6 little small glasses? No. They will never even look alike in any way, shape, or form after you drop them like that. And you can keep dropping glass after glass until the day of judgment, and it's not ever going to happen. Now, you know that, and I know that. But before you start worrying about cyclones and tornadoes making cars and dropping glasses on the pavement, I want you to consider that the whole universe that we look at every day, you take a telescope. Scientists gave us a great thing with a telescope. Take it, though, and look. Look through that telescope some night. Look up at the stars. It's amazing, isn't it? Look at the Milky Way. Look at Saturn. Look at it. Isn't it something? And how many times, how many people have been fascinated and wrote poetry, stories, and poems, songs about the beauty of looking up to the heavens and the stars. And have you ever thought about it? They're all round balls, aren't they? They're round, okay? No squares, no rectangles, no triangles, round balls. And each of them is turning, and each one of them is going in an orbit. They're all moving, and they're all swimming along together, aren't they? Aren't they? Yeah. How? How did that all come about? Wait a minute. Before we go any further, let's take a microscope now. Let's look at that. What do we got here under the microscope? Look. Again, under the microscope, we see these little round balls, and they form something called a molecule. The molecule is divided up even smaller into something called atoms. And the atom, interestingly enough, is also a round ball, and it has round balls circling it. The neutron, the proton, the electron. All of these are round balls going around in circles. And how does that work? How is it that exactly what we see under the microscope reminds us of exactly what we see under the telescope? How is that? I'm going to let you think about that, and I'm going to mention something else at the same time. If we found a book, if we found a manuscript, if we found a scroll, an ancient scroll from the Egyptian times, or from the times of the so-called cavemen, and it told us in there that someday, there'd be a new shopping mall in a place called the Plaza. We'd be amazed, wouldn't we? Especially because they didn't even know what shopping malls are, especially because there was no place called the Plaza, but yet we do find that. And where do you think we find it? We find it right here in the Quran. A number of things in the Quran that will amaze you when you begin to compare and think. And I'm going to be talking more about Science Islam coming up, but I want to take a break. I want to give you a time to ponder over this. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more Science Islam. We're back. You're watching Off Guard. We don't want to be caught off guard, do we? Scientist comes up to you and he says, why do you believe? And you say, well, I believe in God because, why do you believe in God? Where's there any evidence? Can you see God, smell God, taste God, feel God? How do you know there's really a God? And you're like, ooh, wait a minute. He's up, man. What's that? He's telling you, I don't believe in God. I just believe in what I can see, what I can touch, what I can hear, what I can feel. And if it ain't there, it ain't there. That's pretty strange. And the reason, because I'm a scientist. Okay. Well, actually, scientists are the ones that tell us that there are things that we can't see, that yet they still exist. Like dust particles in the air. We don't see those, but they're still there. And there's a lot of things we don't hear. In fact, roosters, dogs, donkeys, they hear a lot of stuff. That's why you hear them hollering, barking, crowing, and all the rest of it. And as far as not being able to touch something, have you ever touched atoms? Have you ever felt the molecules? In fact, have you ever reached out and touched the sun or the moon? But you can see it. You know it's there. But then what about the dark hole out there in outer space? You can't really see it, can you? Can you? No. And you sure didn't go experience that. So just because your senses don't tell you it's there doesn't mean it's not there, does it? There are a lot of misconceptions that people have when they begin to compare science to faith. Before we went to break, I told you that there was, in fact, a book that could increase your faith as a scientist, and it could increase your faith as a believer at the same time, because you can believe in real science and you can believe in real faith. by just spending a little time learning this book. It came in the Arabic language, I'll grant you that. It has to be translated if you speak English like me. And you won't get the full value of it until you learn the Arabic. But you get a lot from it. It's a good deal for you, better than anything else on this planet. But I want to share with you something. The Quran speaks to us about the mountains across the land and how the roots of these mountains reach down with these fingers or roots. They go down like tent pegs, it says. And today we know in geology that's exactly how they're shaped. We know also from the Quran that the earth is winding, and it uses the word kawa. And it's talking about the earth winding or turning in the same way that you put a turban on your head. And lo and behold, we find that the earth is turning. Another statement is in the Quran that the sun moves. The moon is moving. Well, we know about the moon. We found out about the earth, but the sun is moving? In fact, everything in the universe is swimming in orbits, something that we've talked about before, something for you to think about. But how about when a scientist discovers something that didn't really evolve? You know their idea about evolution, how everything came from some little blue-green algae in the swamp-like world, and all of a sudden amoeboids came along and ate it, and then something came along and ate them, and something bigger ate that. And where did these big things come from? And in fact, aren't they really cannibals if they're eating each other? They didn't deal with that subject. And as far as birds, they said it was fish jumping out of the water trying to catch the bugs that are flying over. That their fins became wings. That's kind of weird, especially when you consider that they said it was to catch the bugs flying over, and they never bothered to tell us where the bugs came from. They had wings too, didn't they? What I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of times when people come up with their theories, they don't really use any proof. They just start with an idea and then try to lead up to it. In fact, in recent years, a lot of scientists have discovered that there are things that didn't evolve from something else. They just showed up one day and they have no explanation where they came from. And to satisfy that, they've come up with a word, they've coined a phrase, and they call it ID, intelligent design. Most of the scientists don't want to accept that, even though the proof's right in front of them. That makes you wonder what kind of scientists are you when you look at proof and you don't want to accept it. They've denounced it simply because they want to believe there's nothing, that everything came about as an accident. The Big Bang Theory, evolution, Darwinism, and all the rest of it. When we look at the evidences for this, we find, though, that there's some big loopholes here. We don't have the original anymore from the Old Testament or the New Testament, but we do have the original of the Quran because it's been memorized in the hearts and minds of so many people around the earth today. Maybe you even know somebody who's memorized the Quran. Ask them about it. Find out for yourself. Find out why in chapter 55, verse 33 of the Quran, it tells the assembly of mankind and jinn to go ahead and try to go outside of Earth's atmosphere. Go ahead, try it. And you will never get out of Earth's atmosphere. Illa bi sultan. I use the Arabic there for a reason. And what is Earth's atmosphere if it isn't what we've been talking about many times about how space travel goes and how ships go up and they're going into outer space or going to the moon? And in fact, if this happens, then what does that mean? Doesn't that indicate to us that, well, the Quran must be wrong? We know people have been in outer space. Yeah? Yeah. But look what it says. Illa bi sultan, except by a great authority, a great power. All right. Let's come back to the point here. Spaceship's going to take off in Florida at Cape Canaveral. All right, here it goes. Up. And if you ever watch those clouds billowing underneath it, the whole entire rocket ship disappears. You can't even see it for all these clouds of smoke or whatever it is. Well, in fact, that's not just smoke. What that is the burning gases and vapors of tons and tons of fuel. Now, when you and I buy fuel for our car, how do we buy it? Well, we buy it by the liter or by the gallon, don't we? And boy, do we pay for it. But do you know how they pay for it? Whenever they want to buy it for one of those rocket ships, they don't drive down to the local gas station and say, fill up my rocket ship with jet fuel. No, that's not how it works. In fact, they buy it by the ton. And they tell you how many thousand tons of fuel it takes to lift that rocket ship up. And then as it goes up, those big tanks break off from it, and it keeps going up, 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 up. And the fuel that was in there took so much that probably all America together couldn't pay for it in a long time. Illa bi sultan. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, while we're on this subject, examine this. The very first statement that came in the Quran when it said, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaqa khalaqal insana min alaq." And what it's talking about there, that the human being was created from an alaq, which actually means three things in Arabic. Could be something that clings like a refrigerator magnet. You know how it hangs on? Just stick it on there. A blood clot, I'm going to come back to that, and a leech. You know, you go swimming in some rivers and you got these leeches on you. You know, you heard about leeches, right? You know, kind of like a New York lawyer. Just kidding. But think about this. That's exactly the description when you look in a microscope when a baby is conceived inside of the mother. Exactly. It looks and it is shaped like the leech, and it's clinging. It's clinging and it's attached itself, and it has caused a breakthrough in the wall of the lining of the uterus, and then when it makes the breakthrough, it begins to suck, just like a what? An alaqa, a leech, and it forms a blood clot. All three things with this one exact thing that we find. And by the way, nobody knew that 1,400 years ago. They didn't know it 100 years ago. This is new technology we're just finding out about. There are many other signs that you can find in the Quran that explain a lot of what was in the Bible, make it more clear to you. If you want to understand your Bible, sit with your Quran and compare them and think about it. And then at the same time, I want to tell you, as much as there are so many proofs and evidences from a scientific point of view, the Quran is not a book of science. It's not really. No, the Quran is a speech. It's the speech of Almighty God speaking to you, speaking to me, and reminding us that we're all created and we all owe everything to Him. And unless we will submit to Him on His terms, we're going to have a lot of problems in this life and in the next life. But if we'll just accept that there really is God, and He created everything, and He's behind what happens, and then do the big thing, sacrifice and give up this worldly matter and turn it over to Him. Do what He wants you to do, and do it in peace. And that big expression I just described to you, the surrender, submission, obedience, sincerity, and peace between you and the one above, has a word in Arabic that said the whole thing. That word is Islam. Islam. The speech of Allah in the Quran tells you more about Islam. Finally, I want to mention one more time the website where you can go get a lot more of this information and think about it. It's called Science. Science Islam. SCIENCEISLAM. Don't be caught off guard. Check it out. Find out. Catch you next time right here on Off Guard. Till then, this is Yusuf Estes wishing you